Hi everyone, my name is Ashely Long and I'm an assistant professor and wildlife extension specialist with the LSU AgCenter. My presentation today is geared towards beginning bird watchers and people looking for a new hobby. But if birds are already your passion, I hope you'll find some helpful tips along the way. In general, we get a lot of benefits from participating in outdoor activities like bird watching. Some of these benefits include improved physical health, decreased stress and anxiety. Outdoor activities can also help us develop a deeper connection to nature, and they provide great opportunities to contribute to our local economies. But why try bird watching specifically? Well, bird watching is a lot of fun. You can find birds almost anywhere. You can find them year-round. And in terms of your investment, the time you put into it and the money that you put into it is really quite flexible. And the nice thing about bird watching too is that it really does complement other hobbies that you may have and other activities that you may do. So for example, you might go bird watching while you're out gardening, or you can take a look at the birds that are around you while you're on a walk in the neighborhood. There's a lot of opportunities to go bird watching out there. In addition, the nice thing about bird watching is that it really is a well-established pastime. So there are a lot of resources out there that can help you get started, and there's already a built-in social network. People that you can contact to get more information and that can tell you good places to go or what birds you might want to see or help you with identification. And then lastly, bird watching really does provide a lot of opportunities in general for exploration, for learning, and for conservation. The other cool thing, though, is that the diversity of birds is really quite amazing. There's something for everyone in terms of colors and patterns, shapes, and their behaviors are just as diverse and interesting as their colors and patterns, including different song types, different call types, courtship displays, nesting behavior, foraging behavior. There's something for everybody out there if you're interested in bird watching. So if you're ready to give it a try, here's some basic tips to get started. First, just go ahead and stop, look, and listen to birds in your backyard. Whether you live in town or you live in the country, there's going to be birds everywhere. So just start to investigate different and interesting shapes or different and interesting movements. And then take a closer look at the birds that you already know. Most of us can already identify some basic species like blue jays or American robins or northern cardinals. So once you find those birds, start training your eyes to really follow them around and start training your ears to figure out and locate them on the landscape. It's a great place to get started if you're interested in bird watching. Now, if you find yourself getting drawn into bird watching more as a hobby, you might want to borrow or invest in some helpful supplies. And those things include things like binoculars, a field guide, notebooks, maybe even a phone app. And we'll discuss binoculars more here in a minute. But in terms of field guides, there are a lot of options out there, so start simple. Some options in terms of field guides include National Geographic, the Peterson guide. These two are the first guides that I actually started out with, so they got a little bit of wear and tear, but they're simple guides that are great for beginning birders. There are also guides out there like Sibley's or the Kaufman guides. They're all going to be great if you're looking to start bird watching as a hobby. And you can get one that's new or used for less than $20 online or at your local bookstore. Another thing that you might want to consider if you're starting bird watching as a hobby is a notebook. Now, really any notebook will do, especially if you're watching birds from inside the house. But you might want to consider a waterproof option, like a Write in the Rain notebook, which will help keep your notes from smudging if you're out in wet weather. And then they also have some field notebooks that actually have lines in them that describe what information you might want to write down. So if you're starting and want to get going with bird watching, that notebook is going to be really helpful in terms of writing down your observations. Finally, there are a lot of bird apps out there that can help you identify and keep track of the birds that you see while you're bird watching. Two free options include Audubon and Merlin. What's nice about them is that they're around even if you might not have your field guide with you. The other thing that's great is that in those phone apps, you can find information like the species distribution maps. You'd have examples of songs, different photos. Sometimes they have information on the behavior or the ecology of the species, so they're great resources to have at your fingertips for bird watching. With binoculars, you want to consider comfort, price, view, and magnification. You want to find a pair of binoculars that really feels good when you're out there, that's light enough but has a bright enough view that works for bird watching. So when you start looking at different pairs of binoculars, you'll see two numbers associated with them. The first number is going to refer to magnification. The second number is going to refer to the diameter of the objective lens. Some good options for birders include 7x42 or 8x42, but there are plenty of options available on the market. If you're a beginning bird watcher, and any bird watcher quite frankly, you want to find a pair of binoculars that has a single focus knob right on the top. Right between the two barrels, and that has eye cups that you can adjust, especially if you wear glasses. These can be really helpful. Now, this is a really, really short list of the basics with binoculars. So if you're going to purchase a pair, first talk to other birders. They're going to be great resources for what's available out there. Then you can try to find a store that'll let you try them out. It can be really good to have them actually in your hands, to be able to see the different focus options, to be able to see how heavy they are, how they fit. So if you have the opportunity to do so, definitely go find a store and try the pair out. The other thing to do before you purchase a pair of binoculars is head online and take a look at the different guides and resources available for binoculars. Like I said, there are a ton of options out there, and so websites like the Audubon's website, they have great information that can really help you make a purchase that will not only fit your needs, but also help fit your budget. And then just another tip in terms of binoculars, when you start looking at them, there's really a huge range in terms of prices. You can get a pair online for 20 or 30 bucks, or in a store for 20 or 30 bucks, all the way into the thousands. So if you end up selecting a pair that costs over a couple $100, I would just make sure and recommend that pair be waterproof and also nitrogen purged. Those two things are going to help them be more resistant outdoors and help stop them from fogging up in wet weather. So if you're paying that much for a pair of binoculars, make sure you're getting your money's worth. Moving on to identification, once you find a bird, keep your eye on it for as long as possible and make a mental note of some of your observations. So helpful details include the bird's size, shape, color, and pattern. For example, is it large and uniformly colored like an American crow, or is it small with a black cap like a chickadee, or does it have a distinct blue back and an orange chest like a bluebird? Anything that might be distinctive when you're looking at that bird. You'll also want to make notes of the call or song characteristics. Is it just a short chip, or is that bird singing a long, beautiful melodic song? The location, where did you see the bird? Did you see it in a parking lot, or did you see it in your backyard? The location can also be key. Also the time of season and its behavior. Anything that could help you when you start looking to try to identify it in your field guide, and anything that could help you describe it to another person in case you need some help with identification. Then go ahead and write down whatever it is that you see or hear. And I would suggest writing down those mental notes before you even start looking into the guide so that you don't get off track. After you go through those steps and you write down your notes, you can use your guide to identify the bird to group. Did you see a hawk, or did you see a wading bird, or did you see a songbird? And then once you find the right group in there, then you can start identifying the bird to species. And with anything, and most hobbies really, the key here is going to be patience. There are hundreds of species out there, and even experienced birders can have a rough time. So use the tools that you have at your disposal, try your best, and don't get discouraged. And remember that this is supposed to be a fun activity, so give yourself a break if you find a tough one. You might also try attracting birds to your yard so that you can get a closer look. And bird feeders are one great way to do that. Now, the feeder types out there really are endless, and so variety is key. You can try out different platforms, hoppers, tubes, different cages, and try to keep them filled year-round once you put them out so that the birds have a consistent food source. When it comes to feeders, don't be afraid to get creative. Here's some hummingbird feeders that I made out of things that I had in my cupboard. So as an example, this is an ice cream container that got a little warped when it went through the dishwasher. So I took that ice cream container and some Chick-fil-A straws, and I made a little hummingbird feeder out of it. And they'll use it just the same as they use the hummingbird feeders that you get at the store. Here's another option. You can get these stoppers for about $5 online, or you can get them at the Wild Birds Unlimited store right here in Baton Rouge. And this is a wine bottle I had. And so all it is some wire and some beads that I pulled out of the cupboard, and they can make some pretty beautiful hummingbird feeders. So you don't have to get them from the store, or you can put a variety of out there. Have fun with it, get creative, and make this space beautiful for you as well as the birds. Now, when you're deciding on where to place your feeders, you want to try to locate them either pretty close, within 3 feet or so, or pretty far away from your windows. And by far away, I mean a little over 30 feet. And that's to try to prevent collisions. But there are a lot of things that you can consider when you're placing your feeders out in your backyard. You want to make sure that they're close enough to vegetation so that the birds have access to cover, but not so close that potential predators can actually access the feeders. If you've had bird feeders in the past, or if you've watched birds at other people's bird feeders, you know that other wildlife can make a pretty long jump from the vegetation to the feeders themselves. So you may have to play with placement, put them in different portions of your yard until you get something that works for yourself and works for the birds in terms of location. Now, just like feeders, the food types out there are endless as well. But again, variety is key. You want to look for quality mixes that don't have a lot of fillers, like cracked corn. There are a lot of really good options out there. Black oil sunflower seed, for example, is a good option because a lot of different types of birds can use them as a food source. You can also try using unsalted peanuts in the shell for larger birds. You can put out nectar or fruit, suet, and mealworms, and they'll attract a different suite of species, so things like hummingbirds or woodpeckers. So again, just like with the feeders, try different things, have fun with it, and keep track of what you see over time so that you can use those food resources to attract the species you're interested in. Now, if you're like a lot of people, you may have seen videos online of squirrels getting to feeders, or if you have feeders already in your backyard, you may have seen some unwanted guests, like rats or squirrels, those type of thing. And they're just trying to eat too, right? But sometimes we might not want them at our feeders. If you're having a problem with those unwanted guests, try a baffle around the bird feeder. Now, most importantly, if you put out feeders, be sure to clean them regularly. And it'll help with a lot of things. It'll help minimize disease transmission, residue, or odors. And really, how often I mean by regularly depends on what time of year it is and where you're located. So in the heat of the summer down here in Louisiana, I might have to clean my hummingbird feeders on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. And that's because if you leave them out there for too long, you'll see mold start growing on the inside of the feeder. During the winter, I might wait 2 or 3 weeks to clean the feeders. It really just depends. So keep an eye on them and try to keep them cleaned up as much as possible. In addition to feeding birds, you might try attracting birds to your yard with water. So in terms of placement, you want to put your bird baths in locations that can be easily observed. You want to see them, right? Also in locations that have cover nearby and that are shaded. Now, that's not only going to help the birds out, right? Especially in the heat of the summer, but it's also going to help minimize evaporation. And if you have those types of pedestal or dish style bird baths, you want to make sure that They're no more than 2 to 3 inches deep, and that they have a rough surface so that the birds have some place to perch without actually slipping. Now, if the bird bath that you purchase or a bird bath that you already have doesn't have those type of features, you can easily make it work, and you can adapt it by creating different depths. You can add rocks or saucers to it. You can also add small sticks that the birds can use for perches. So use what you've got if you're considering putting out water for birds. You might also consider adding motion with a dripper or a circulating pump. Now, that's going to do a couple of things. One, the sound can attract birds to your yard, but also it can help minimize mosquitoes, and it can help minimize the need to clean it as often if you have that circulating water in there. Just like with the feeders, you want to clean them regularly and try to minimize your use of chemicals, either to keep algae down or to keep them cleaned out. It's better for the birds in the long run. Now, just a couple other considerations while we're talking about attracting birds. It really is best to keep your cats indoors if you have them. They're great companions. I have a cat. I love him dearly, but they also represent a major threat to birds and other wildlife. So keeping those cats indoors can help keep the birds that you have in your backyard safe from potential predators. The other thing that you might want to consider is marking large windows with decals to prevent window collisions. Now, if you have one of those big bay windows, or if you have a window like I have at my house that's attached to a sliding glass door, birds can end up running into them and dying as a result. So if you have a situation like that, those decals are a really cheap and easy way to help prevent those window collisions. The next topic, landscaping for birds, really could be a workshop in and of itself. So I'm going to stick really general here. But if you're considering planting vegetation to attract birds to your backyard, before you modify your landscape, learn the birds and plants that you already have. It's likely that you've got birds in your yard that are using some of the vegetation, so you want to get an idea of what you've got first. Then go ahead and plant or maintain vegetation that grows to a variety of heights and that's structurally diverse. You want to think layering when you put together your landscape plan, and that's ultimately going to provide more food and cover types for the birds throughout the year. And when possible, try to plant some native species. First, it's going to provide familiar resources to the birds and other wildlife, but also it's good for you as well. Requires less work. They're adapted to the local climate. They require less water, fewer pesticides, and again, they're going to bloom and seed at various times of the year, which is going to be good for the birds that you're trying to attract to your backyard. And there are a lot of options out there. Things like milkweeds, goldenrods, coneflowers. In terms of woody species, again, you've got plenty of options out there, something like beautyberry or buttonbush, trees like hackberries, different pine species. So you've got a lot of options, but keep in mind as you're putting together your plan, if you're trying to landscape for birds, you're really trying to provide the birds with food resources like insects or fruits year-round, as well as perching and nesting sites. So you want to get a lot of variety in there to attract the different types of birds to your backyard. And it's also important to note that with birds, or if you're landscaping specifically with birds, it's okay to be messy. Brush piles and edges can provide great foraging opportunities and safety from potential predators and the weather. And leaf litter around the base of your trees and shrubs can also provide great resources, and that decaying material can enhance your soil. So, you know, if you're landscaping with birds in mind, just know you don't have to have a completely clean landscaping plan. You can have a little bit of brush piles and layers around it, and it'll be good for your birds. Once you're ready, venture outside your backyard to watch birds. Potential locations include your neighborhood. You can go to nearby parks, birding trails, nature centers. And then once you're there, make sure to practice good etiquette. You want to make sure that we're not trespassing or littering. We want to avoid chasing or disturbing birds, and just like any other outdoor activity, while you're out there bird watching, go ahead and step aside for others. But do ask for help and invite friends and family to join you. One thing that's great about the bird watching community is that if you're out there looking for birds and you're having a tough time with a bird species, or you're just getting started, you can ask others that are out there, and more than likely they'll enthusiastically help you either locate the bird with your binoculars, or find the bird, or help you identify it by sight or sound. So ask for help if you see people out there who are doing the same activity. Then, once you've built up those skills, you can offer your assistance too. And you can consider contributing to citizen science programs like those that are offered through eBird or iNaturalist. And be sure to check out some local birding festivals or programs. They can be a lot of fun, and they'll put you in touch with others who share your interests. We're lucky here in Louisiana to have several of those types of programs. So whether you're interested in hummingbirds specifically, or migrating birds, there's a program out there for you, and they can be a lot of fun. But in general, and this is on a personal note, I'll just say that as you're out bird watching, just be careful where you're standing. One, you want to make sure that you're keeping track of other people and you're not in other people's way, but also in terms of the ground, it's not fun to end up with a boot full of fire ants while you're bird watching. So just keep and be aware of your surroundings, and watch where you step. A great bird watching opportunity right here in Louisiana is the AgCenter's Birdwatching Museum and Gardens. Now, Birdwatching is about a 440-acre urban green space right in the heart of Baton Rouge. It includes a raised boardwalk and educational trails, and it's fantastic for both beginning and experienced birders alike. Birders and bird watchers have located over 320 species of birds at Birdwatching, and they have a newly established Birding at Birdwatching trail system that spans a diversity of habitats. If you're interested in birding at Birdwatching, you can pick up a brochure at the main office that features a map. You can also ask questions from the staff that are in there. And that map is going to outline 6 different birding loops that cover different habitat types, different vegetation types across the property. So the AgCenter loop that includes orchards and fields. We've got the trees and trails loop that goes through a wooded ecosystem. We also have the Windrush loop that goes through gardens. So there's a little bit of everything out here. And that brochure is also going to have a description of each loop, the birds that you're likely to find along the way, and a checklist so that you can keep track of what you saw. It's a great resource for both beginning and experienced birders alike. The other cool thing about Birdwatching is that they've set up feeder stations across the property where you can sit and observe the birds. Some of those locations are actually located near the children's garden and playground. So if you're not interested, or if you're not able on any given day to go do one of the trails, you can sit, eat lunch, bird, take a look at the things that are going on around you while you're enjoying the scenery. So again, it's really a great location for bird watching right here in Baton Rouge. If we piqued your interest in bird watching, you can find more information online. And if you're specifically interested in bird watching at Birdwatching, once they open back up, head on over and stop into their main office for a brochure and for more details. To wrap things up, I just want to thank you for listening to today's presentation. Be safe and have fun out there, and give bird watching a shot. It's really a lot of fun.